Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Professionals You Should Know. This show is about uncovering the journeys of professionals from different industries. And today, we have the engaging, insightful Vanessa Boateng Mason, who is a cognitive behavioral therapist. So thank you for coming on the show. So, what is it that you do?
I'm a cognitive behavioural therapist working with the NHS and privately.
So what's a cognitive behavioural therapist?
Basically I treat and assess those with common mental health difficulties, such as maybe depression, social anxiety, PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
So those who've experienced kind of traumatic events, whether it be in a childhood or traffic accidents or kind of sexual abuse, things like
Really?
this. Yeah.
So what, you assess them, and so what do you mean by that?
So at the beginning of treatment, kind of the first point is kind of having a conversation with them, having a conversation about how they're feeling and how they're feeling is having an impact on the day-to-day, for example. If somebody is experiencing something like social anxiety, they may experience that they find it quite hard, obviously, in social situations, also at work, so it may be impacting their work abilities, things like that. Or if somebody's depressed, they may notice that their motivation to do things is just out of the window, so they're not doing anything and being quite critical of themselves, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And you'll be helping them on the journey to getting back to where they were before.
Exactly. Providing strategies to help them cope with how they're feeling.
That's nice.
And just become aware of when things are becoming a bit too difficult, and when to implement the strategies that we've covered as well, and also to help them understand themselves a bit better as well. Just promote awareness, which is very important.
So you do all that. That's really good. Okay. So why? What got you into this journey? What was your journey to becoming a cognitive behavioral therapist?
Well, it just started off at college, really.
Okay.
Originally, I was going to do pharmacy.
Okay. Why?
Why I just wanted to do pharmacy?
Yeah.
Oh, because my parents wanted me to do that.
Okay.
And then I realised that I didn't want to do that. And as I was doing my college kind of A-levels, I was doing psychology, and I realised that I was very passionate about it, and I was very interested in it, and I did really well in it as well.
What, psychology?
Yeah. So I took that on to university, did my undergrad, and I did my master's as well in early interventions in psychosis. And so that's basically learning about those who experience their first episode of psychosis, or who are at an at-risk mental state, and that essentially means that those who are vulnerable to experiencing psychosis as well, whether it be family history or maybe be their lifestyle. Cannabis, we know that is dominant inside that area. When I finished doing that master's, I worked in the early intervention team. Okay. So that was kind of a multidisciplinary team. So working with maybe social workers, nurses, psychiatrists, and clinical psychologists. So working in that kind of group, and that was designed to prevent relapse and also just manage kind of their mental well-being and recovery as well.
That's interesting.
And then after that, that's when I decided to do kind of my low-intensity CBT training and my high-intensity CBT training.
So what's the difference between the two, and why did you need it?
So low-intensity is more so managing those who are maybe struggling, but they are kind of teetering, if that makes sense. So they're not, they're getting through a little bit, but they need that additional support. And they're aware that they need that support. Whereas high intensity training is for those with kind of more severe presentations. There's things that you would need support, such as in the post-traumatic stress disorder, where you're experiencing things like flashbacks, maybe difficulties maintaining relationships, or one thing that guys tend to come to therapy for would be kind of low libido, because that's a real
they would see a woman for that, or would they see a man for it?
Men prefer talking to women.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the different things are, but most of them request to be seen by women, and it might be due to maybe feeling judged by a man or something like that. See why. But everybody might have their own different reason.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what kind of reinforced that yeah, this is exactly what you wanted to do? Because I know you went through the uni process and your journey and your experience, but what was it that, like, yeah, this is definitely what I want to do?
I think it was because, do you know what? It's something that I'm passionate about.
Right.
And it's something that I feel I get a sense of, I don't know, achievement by helping somebody get through it. And also it's a career whereby I feel like I won't get stale. And what I mean by that is that I'm always learning something. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So because we haven't discovered exactly how the brain works and things like this. So there's always new advances in therapy and new techniques that are being learned. And so that's why I kind of enjoy it, because it's quite fascinating to me. It's interesting to me, if that makes sense.
Was there like a particular story that made you stay in the profession? Because I know some people, you know, they do a profession and then they change somewhere down the line. But is there something like, I don't know, experience with a patient that, you know, you had, or a client that you had, and it was like, you know what, I actually am doing something really good, and I like what I'm doing?
Well, I feel like I have a lot of those stories.
Oh, just one. We all have them. Just one.
It's quite hard to pinpoint one, but I guess there was... there's so many. I remember this one lady, actually. She was quite elderly.
I love it. Elderly.
Okay. and I really enjoyed working with her. Well, at the beginning I didn't enjoy working with her because she was very resistant. She came to treatment because she knew that she was struggling, but you know, she would always find a reason why the strategies what I'm offering won't work. Right. It's not going to work. I tried it and it didn't work, and there was always a but, if that makes sense.
Right.
And then I had kind of been obviously researching and just trying to figure out what can I do in the session. And then so I incorporated what we call kind of acceptance and commitment therapy into it, which is more so helping her to connect with the here and now. Okay. Because she was struggling with generalized anxiety disorder. So that's when you're just worrying about everything and anything. And that was leading her to feel very depressed, quite suicidal, things like that. She would rather be dead than be on the surface worrying about everything. This is a lady that would see there used to be like lots of like water spills. What's that thing? A burst water main. Yeah. And she would not let it go. She would have to call her council. She had to call Thames Water. Things like that. She and unless it was fixed, it was her responsibility to fix it. If that makes sense. Yeah. So she was just she was always worrying about it, so to speak. And so acceptance and commitment therapy helped her by helping her to refocus her mind to the here and now, and I helped her to kind of challenge her role, her sense of responsibility in that, if that makes sense. Good. And as that happened, like, there was like a ray of sunshine. Like, she was able to let things go, if that makes sense. And it was just a beautiful moment, because at the end, you know, she was very grateful, and she, like, you know, not supposed to hug clients, but she hugged me and stuff. So it was just a really beautiful moment, having seen somebody struggling so much, and then at the end, seeing the result at the end of it.
That's amazing. Yeah. So that's what kept you.
It just keeps me going, knowing that I've kind of made a difference and helped somebody. And I mean, I help everyone that I work with, but you know, those type of stories stick with you, because I guess it's building that relationship. Seeing that, you know, they're struggling, seeing how it's impacting their kind of family relationships, and seeing how low that they've gotten, and seeing how hard they work to be able to get themselves out of it as well. So that's also just really beautiful to see.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. You must be proud about that as well.
I mean,
I know you both work together, but you know, your strategy that you put in place.
I mean, she put a lot of work, I put a lot of work in, and she good result.
Is there any kind of misconceptions in your role about what you do? Because I know there's a CBT or cognitive behavioral therapist, and there's psychologists. Are you guys the same, different? Is that one of the misconceptions that can be? Or
I mean, we do a lot of similar things, right? But they are, I mean, in terms of clinical psychologists, they're I guess trained in different modalities. So like psychotherapy, whereby it's more so psychoanalytical, so looking at the childhood and how that affected them and things like this. We do dip into that, but we don't spend so much time on it.
Right.
And with clinical psychologists, you know, they have that research component and all that stuff. Right. They are heavily CBT based as well. Right. So that is a misconception. Other than that, I can't really think of other misconceptions that come to mind.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I know you say that they delve deeper into the childhood. Yeah. What do you guys do then? Yeah. So would it be more here and now then, as
yeah. So we do, for example, in the assessment, we do go to early years. So going through maybe situations maybe where they found it quite difficult and they struggled, and that's us just trying to explore something which we call core beliefs. And these core beliefs mean the kind of the opinions that we hold about ourselves, the world, and the future. So, for example, a common core belief that I come across in my kind of work is kind of I'm not good enough.
Yeah, we all have that as well.
And so there's that, you know, constant battle to kind of maybe prove yourself or to, and those core beliefs birth what we call rules and assumptions about, you know, ourselves and how we think we should behave, for example. And the example could be, if you have a core belief that I'm not good enough, an example of a rule is that I should always be giving, if that makes sense, so that I, do you get what I'm trying to say? And so we do go into that part, but mostly it's getting a picture of what's kind of been birthed and trying to make changes, if that makes sense.
So who do you feel that kind of appreciates you the most? Would you say it would be government, patients, colleagues? Like, where do you feel you get kind of like the most satisfaction from the job?
I mean, I feel like if the question was who appreciates us the most, it would be patients, first and foremost. But I also feel like we do a lot for the government, if that makes sense. Society, because our service was designed because of how many people were taken off sick because of their mental health. So it was designed so that we keep people in work, and that they get the support that they need, if that makes sense.
Whilst in work.
And so I feel like we've saved a lot of money. Do you get what I'm trying to say? But in terms of like the personal appreciation, it would be from the clients that we see. All
right. So what we're going to do now, we're going to do a rapid fire. Rapid fire questions, right? So what basically I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you 3 closed questions. So it's either a yes or no, or it's you pick a choice. So our first question. Which method do you feel is better to get over a traumatic experience? Exposure or avoidance?
Exposure.
Okay. Second, in your opinion, what do you think is harder to treat? Anxiety or depression?
Wow. Because as a caveat to that, because there's different anxiety disorders. Do you understand?
All right, fair enough.
So if I would say personally, for me, it would be kind of generalized anxiety disorder over depression.
And our final and last question. What do you think works better with CBT? Music therapy or exercise?
That's an interesting question.
I know, right?
That's a tricky one.
Okay.
Do you know what? I would say exercise.
Fair play. So in our last few questions, in your opinion, where do you feel the healthcare industry will be without CBT or cognitive behavioral therapists?
I think I think that's quite a difficult question to answer because we are embedded in so many different services. so it'll be the services in terms of the NHS. I feel like it'll be very chaotic, if that makes sense, because your physical health affects your mental health. It's quite kind of intertwined, and so I think it would be in disarray. I feel like there'll be a lot of people struggling, a lot of people not knowing what to do, if that makes sense.
Because that's what I wanted to touch on earlier, because obviously we just had a pandemic. That's something of that's never happened before. Has the cases of your clients gone up because, you know, it's now more again about mental health, wasn't able to go outside? Are you seeing more clients because of this? You know, again, they're losing their jobs. Has there been an increase in that?
Definitely, there's been an influx, and especially because of, obviously, there's that anxiety about health and you know, cleaning and washing your hands, and people may have been doing it excessively, if that makes sense. And because the pandemic is over, it's not like they're just going to stop doing it, if that makes sense, because there's that fear that something bad's going to happen, that I might get COVID and you might die, if that makes sense.
Really?
Yeah, that's actually been quite frequent. And there is the other side of people losing their jobs and not knowing what to do and becoming quite depressed and not going out and not seeing friends. So that element has really had allow people to go through a lot of challenges and changes in their lives as well. And also you have to understand of what a job means to people. If, you know, there's that kind of, you know, for some men, it may be providing. And if they are not doing that for the family, they might have a very big hit on their self-esteem and their self-worth. As well as women as well, but maybe less so. And also going back into the workplace, people that I've assessed are finding it quite difficult, finding it quite overwhelming going back into the workplace, because they've been quite isolated for such a long time. You know, there's a lot of influences that the pandemic has had, not in a good way, actually, in a negative way.
And just on a day-to-day basis, do you normally see more women than men, or men women? I have, on my caseload, I think I have 95% women. Really? Yes. They're like, interesting. Honestly, it's majority is women, and what I find is that when I do have clients who are men, it's when it's maybe at a breaking point, right, or when they are. For example, a common one is, if you don't get help, I'm leaving you. A common one is, you know, I'm not managing stress at work, I'm going to get fired. Things like this, like they're on disciplinary, things like that. They leave it to kind of the breaking point. And it's even worse for people who are black and minority ethnic. You hardly ever see a black person or an Asian, like you hardly ever see it. It's very, if you were going to say kind of, I can't put figures on it, but let's just say if there's 100%, well, let's just say I can't put numbers on it, but there's a very low proportion of black men and even black women coming into services. Really? There is. Is it because it doesn't exist, or are they just afraid to use these services, or? There's a number of reasons, but I think one of the main reasons is referrals. What research has shown is that, you know, GPs are more reluctant to refer those from BME backgrounds. Really? Yeah. Especially if also you have difficulty speaking in English as well. That plays a role inside it. But there's also research showing that kind of people from BME backgrounds will try and go through other things, then seek kind of mental health support. And there's that kind of there's a lot of stigma around it. Obviously in the community, you're kind of shunned. It kind of looked down, like you're struggling, you're weak, things like this. And there's also kind of all these falsehoods about kind of, if you come to the NHS for support, we're going to tell your workplace, or you're going to, they're just going to put you on medication. So they're unlikely to talk about it, if that makes sense. There's a lot of, or they might go to like
if they are religious, may go to their church or their pastor and their imam or whatever before they try something else as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. One of our next questions is, do you see your profession changing in any way? I don't know, again, more status, in government level? I don't know. Did you see it progressing in any way, and how?
I feel like it's already starting to progress.
Okay.
I feel that the government are taking the role of mental health a lot more seriously.
Yeah.
And they are putting a lot more funding and services to upskill us, if that makes sense. So from where I work in the NHS, there's always training to make us kind of more specialist practitioners, because obviously it's quite complex dealing with kind of mental health and things like this. So in terms of status, I'm unsure about that. I'm unsure what that will hold.
Okay.
And how that will change.
But it's still progressing in a way that you kind of like.
Yeah, I feel like in terms of, I feel it's not progressing as fast as it should be.
Okay.
But I have seen some changes from when I started to now, and how much the government is willing to, I guess, fund and support our services and getting more clients in, because they see the value of what support we provide.
And I'm guessing they've seen the benefit as well from
exactly
from the patient.
And they're probably aware that because of this pandemic they need
there's a lot of
exactly.
For real. Okay, that's good. And for our final question, do you feel there's anything missing from your profession at all?
Okay, that's a big question. I
know, yeah, right.
There's so much things I feel is missing from our profession, but I feel like in NHS as a whole, I feel like it's like Windows 98. It's not been updated.
Right.
Do you get what I'm trying to say? The systems that are in place are they're still too complex. It should be streamlined. Right. I think that's the main concern.
Like an example, what do you mean by that?
An example would be, if a GP is quite concerned that somebody has, for example, psychosis, instead of referring them straight on to secondary services, which is for those who need kind of acute care or kind of that, very severe support, they will send them to us. Right. Because we're considered the gatekeepers. Right. Do you understand? Right. Whereas, you have adequately trained people inside the secondary care to be able to assess and treat those people. Right. So you're delaying the process of them receiving care. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Right. Another example is when I was working in an EI team, and one of my early intervention team. Yeah. And one of my clients, he was visiting. He lived in London, but was visiting his grandmother. His grandmother lived in the Cotswolds or Cornwall, something like that. Over time, he was not taking medication. With psychosis, if you're not taking medication, there can be a steep decline. Do you understand? Okay. So he wasn't taking his medication, went to visit family, had an acute crisis there. Obviously, you would imagine because the NHS covers the whole of England. Yeah. That they the services will be able to type in the name and know that he's actually known to mental health services, but they wouldn't. Do you understand? And with antipsychotics, you might give them olanzapine or other medications, aripiprazole, stuff like that, but it's tailored to what they need, if that makes sense. Yeah. And not everybody responds to the medication the same. Not all medications are efficacious to everybody, if that makes sense. So what happened was, he was sectioned, but he was given these medications that and obviously he couldn't communicate that as well, that he wouldn't use ordinarily. So it just led to him being distressed, not having family around, because he was visiting family, but his parents and stuff with, so not having people that he was familiar with over here. And it shouldn't have, I feel like that shouldn't have happened. Do you understand? Simple things. But in terms of kind of CBT,
So going back to that, what should have happened?
What should have happened would for us to have a global system, so that if I type in your name, your date of birth, maybe even your postcode, where you originally live, or whatever, or even if he had his driving license on him, you'll be able to just find his file, and you know what his treatment plan is, his care plan is, what what things he. Because obviously, when you make the care plan, he has the capacity to agree to certain things, if that makes sense.
So you would make the care plan
together.
Yeah, right. You and him.
Yeah, we make the care plan, and so those practitioners should have been aware of what he needed. Do you understand? And what he was prone to do when he becomes acutely unwell, and what. For example, when he becomes acutely unwell, he becomes like mute. He doesn't speak and he doesn't eat as well. But there's certain things he will eat, like chocolate, dark chocolate. He will eat that. Do you understand? They should have all that information.
And that's in his care plan as well.
Exactly, that's in his care plan. So,
okay, you was gonna say another thing that's missing as well.
In CBT, I mean, inside the service I work with, to be honest, I feel like that's very dependent on your service.
Right.
Because right now I'm in a brilliant service. I'm not even going to lie. I am in the top tier to the side. So I can't say right now I am missing anything. But when I was in a not so good service, I will say that training wasn't provided.
Right.
Because as I mentioned, the brain is, mood and managing people can be quite difficult and complex. You need a lot of tools in your toolbox to be able to manage these people, especially as now they're kind of broadening what types of presentations we're seeing. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So we need something to supplement that.
Yeah.
But right now that's not a problem for me.
Okay. And I know you're in NHS. Have you ever worked in somewhere different from hospital settings, or what is your setup? Have you ever worked in like hospital? I mean, in prisons or anything of that nature?
Yeah, I worked in prisons, and
is it different there?
It was very different.
And is it the same psychosis that you're dealing with, or is it something completely different?
So you're dealing with everything.
Really?
Yeah, because it's one thing I must say, in terms of prison, there's not a lot of funding inside prisons. So they try, what they've done is kind of just put everything in one pot, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so inside prisons, you're seeing things like personality disorders and, just a lot of trauma. There's a lot of PTSD inside there as well. A lot of anxiety disorders, panic, things like this, panic disorder. And yeah, it's just unfortunate that I don't feel maybe the government has sees the value of mental health support inside inside prisons, because when I was there, there was people that wanted support. Do you understand? And because I worked in a male prison, there was people that wanted support, but also there was a lot that didn't want support. But it was just, for me, working in the prison, it was just refreshing and upsetting, because obviously there's a disproportionate amount of black people inside and people from BME backgrounds inside the prisons. But it was also refreshing that when I went there, they valued seeing me, if that makes sense. Because I remember seeing some people saying that it's because I don't have to break it down. Do you understand? Whereas before I was there, they're all Caucasian. Do you understand? So they may not have wanted to kind of speak up and things like that. They may feel like they'll be judged if they say certain things and things like that. So I really valued my time there. So
you also say it's quite important that even being a CBT practitioner, it should also it is helpful if you're in a certain particular demographics. So for example, if you're going to see like loads of black people in prison, it would be nice if it would be a CBT practitioner that is black. Yeah, they will open up a little bit more.
Definitely. I would definitely say so. Again, there's that you know, not a lot of practitioners want to work in prisons.
Right. Okay.
Whereas my experience, I felt very safe in the. I was the safest I've ever been. Do you understand? Like, and I think that may be because I was a female and the male.
I thought it would be the other way around.
I know.
You know, I thought they would be pouncing.
I mean, you do get that obviously, but majority of the men were very respectful.
Okay.
And if somebody tried to say something like off the cuff, they will like literally stop them, if that makes sense. Obviously, you have guards that are there. You have your kind of walkie-talkie. You get your training and stuff like that. But it was very safe being there. And I do feel that they should try and encourage those, or just have a diverse team. Do you understand? So that you know, you have the availability of staff to kind of manage that. Do you understand?
No, I completely agree. All right. For our final question, so obviously, you know, the show is called The Professionals You Should Know. Is there another professional that you think we should know, and why?
That's an interesting question. And I was thinking about that. Maybe like
is there anyone that you work with that you might be like, they're interesting, or, you know, someone that you haven't worked with and you're just thinking, what do they do? Or,
right, yeah. Do you know, I'm currently treating somebody that's a software engineer. And he has a very interesting job. He has a very interesting job. So it'll be someone like that.
A software engineer. Oh, check that out. I know, but it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for coming. Thanks.
It's been a pleasure.